Some promises are made in fire and tested in ice. And the cruelest truth is that time doesn't care how much you meant them. Dev traced his finger along Priya's palm as morning light filtered through their tiny apartment window. 22 years old, broke, and absolutely certain they had figured out what older couples couldn't. Her medical textbooks were scattered across their bed, his business plans tucked under coffee cups on the nightstand. "Promise me something," Priya whispered, her dark eyes serious despite the smile playing at her lips. "Anything. Promise me we'll never become those couples who stop talking, who sit at dinner tables in silence, counting the years instead of making memories." Dev laughed, pulling her closer. "Are you kidding? Look at us. We can't shut up around each other." And it was true. They talked about everything. Her dreams of saving lives, his plans to build something meaningful. They debated movies, shared secrets, planned futures with the reckless confidence of youth. "We'll never grow apart," Dev said, meaning every word. "We're too stubborn for that." Priya pressed her forehead against his. "Good, because I'm going to hold you to that promise for the next 60 years. They sealed it with a kiss, believing love was enough, believing passion would always find a way, believing time was their friend. But time, as they would learn, keeps its own promises. The apartment was small, but their dreams were enormous. Dev would graduate, climb the corporate ladder, maybe start his own company. Priya would become the surgeon she dreamed of being since childhood. They'd travel, have kids when they were ready, build a life that looked nothing like their parents' quiet disappointments. "We're going to be different," Priya said one evening, watching an elderly couple eat dinner in complete silence at the restaurant where she waitressed between classes. "Completely different," Dev agreed. Neither of them noticed how confidently they spoke about the future, as if willpower alone could hold back the tide of change that comes for every marriage, every dream, every promise made in the golden hour of young love. The first crack appeared so small they missed it entirely. A job opportunity that required one of them to sacrifice, a moment of resentment quickly buried, a conversation postponed until later that never quite arrived. But that night, wrapped in cheap sheets and expensive dreams, they were invincible. Time would prove them beautifully, tragically wrong. The funny thing about sacrifice is how noble it feels in the beginning and how much it costs you in the end. 5 years later, Dev folded another tiny t-shirt while Priya's surgical scrubs tumbled in the dryer. Their son Arjun babbled from his high chair, bananas smeared across his chubby cheeks, completely unaware that his existence had rewritten his parents' entire story. The conversation had happened gradually, then all at once. Priya's residency was brutal, 18-hour days, impossible schedules, a future that demanded everything she had. Someone needed to be home with Arjun. Someone needed to sacrifice. Dev had volunteered with a smile that felt genuine at the time. "It makes sense," he'd told his skeptical friends at the bar one last time before his corporate dreams got packed away like winter clothes. "Priya's gonna make great money as a surgeon. I can go back to work later. This is temporary." Temporary had lasted 3 years. Now Dev measured his days in feeding schedules and nap times instead of meetings and deadlines. His business suits hung in the closet like ghosts of a different life. His LinkedIn profile gathered digital dust while Priya's grew more impressive by the month. "How was your day?" Priya would ask, collapsing onto their couch at 9 p.m., still smelling like hospital disinfectant. "Good," Dev would lie, not mentioning how he'd stood in the grocery store for 10 minutes, paralyzed by the choice between 2 brands of yogurt, desperate for any decision that felt important. His friends stopped calling after the 3rd time he couldn't meet them for drinks because he had a teething baby. His mother stopped asking about his career after the 10th time he deflected with updates about Arjun's milestones. "You're so good at this," Priya would say, watching him change diapers with practiced efficiency. "Better than I ever could be." Dev learned to smile at the compliment that felt like a cage. During Arjun's naps, Dev would scroll through LinkedIn, watching his former colleagues announce promotions and new ventures. Each notification was a reminder of the life he'd traded away. He told himself it was temporary, that sacrifice was love, that being present for his son was the most important job in the world. Most days, he even believed it. But late at night, when Priya fell asleep instantly from exhaustion and Arjun finally stopped crying, Dev would lie in the dark and wonder who he was becoming. The ambitious young man who'd made business plans over coffee seemed like someone he'd known in another lifetime. "We're a team," Priya would say when she caught him staring out the window with that distant look. Right, a team. But teams, he was learning, could still have players who felt like they were losing the game.
Silence has its own language, and theirs was becoming fluent in all the wrong words. The dinner table had become a battlefield disguised as furniture. Dev served pasta while Priya checked her phone, responding to messages about tomorrow's surgery. Arjun, now 4, chattered about his day at preschool, his voice the only genuine sound in the room. "Dr. Kumar asked me to assist on the cardiac procedure next week," Priya said without looking up from her screen. "That's great," Dev replied, his voice flat as roadkill. "It could mean more opportunities, maybe a fellowship track. More hours away from home, you mean?" Priya finally looked up, her eyes sharp. "Someone has to think about our future, Dev." "Right, because what I do here doesn't count as thinking about our future?" "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant." Arjun stopped eating, sensing the electricity in the air the way children do. Their parents were speaking in code again, using words that meant different things than they sounded like. This had become their routine, verbal fencing matches disguised as conversations. Every exchange was loaded with resentment that neither of them knew how to name directly. Dev had started taking longer walks after dinner, pushing Arjun in his stroller through neighborhoods where other families seemed happier. He'd pass houses with lit windows, wondering if the people inside knew how to talk to each other without drawing blood. Priya worked later and later, telling herself it was dedication, not avoidance. But the truth was, home had started feeling like a place where she couldn't do anything right, where her success felt like an accusation rather than an achievement. "Daddy's sad," Arjun announced one evening with the brutal honesty of childhood. "Daddy's just tired, sweetheart," Dev said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But Priya saw the truth in her son's observation. Dev was disappearing, piece by piece, like a photograph left too long in the sun. The man who used to laugh until he cried now barely managed polite smiles. The person who'd once talked her ear off about everything from politics to pizza toppings now communicated in grunts and shrugs. She wanted to reach across the growing distance between them, but she didn't know how. Every attempt at conversation felt like stepping on a landmine. Every success at work seemed to push him further away. "We used to be happy," she whispered to herself in the hospital bathroom one night, catching her reflection in the harsh fluorescent lighting. The woman looking back at her was successful, respected, accomplished, and completely lost when it came to the most important relationship in her life. At home, Dev stood in their bedroom, staring at the man in the mirror who looked like him but felt like a stranger. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped being a person and started being a function, the one who handled everything so Priya could shine. He was proud of her. That was the complicated part. She was brilliant, dedicated, saving lives every day. But watching her soar while he managed grocery lists and playdates felt like drowning in slow motion. When love turns into silence, silence begins to scream. And in their house, the screaming was getting louder every day.
Sometimes the truth we're hiding from our closest people is exactly what they need to hear, but we're too afraid to say it out loud. Priya wasn't snooping. She was looking for her old laptop charger in Dev's desk drawer when she saw it, a Reddit notification on his phone screen that had lit up beside his keys. "Sometimes I hate being a father." Her blood turned to ice water. The phone went dark before she could read more, but the words were burned into her retinas. She stood there for a full minute, staring at the black screen, wondering if she'd imagined it. That evening, after Dev took Arjun to the park, Priya did something she'd never done before. She looked through his browser history. What she found destroyed her. Username, SilentDadXXX. Does anyone else feel like they accidentally traded their entire life for someone else's dream? I love my kid, but I hate what I've become. I'm 29 and I feel like I'm 60. My wife is brilliant and successful, and I'm, what, a professional diaper changer? Some days I look at my son and feel this crushing weight. Not because I don't love him, but because loving him cost me everything I used to be. Is that normal? Am I a monster? I fantasize about running away, just disappearing, starting over somewhere else as someone else. Then I feel guilty for even thinking it. The cycle never ends. My wife thinks I'm happy. She has no idea I cry in the shower some mornings. She's so focused on her career that I've become invisible. I could probably disappear for a week and she'd only notice when there's no clean laundry. Post after post of raw, brutal honesty. Pain so deep, it made Priya physically nauseated. This wasn't the Dev who smiled at her over breakfast. This wasn't the man who played peekaboo with Arjun or asked about her surgeries. This was someone drowning, screaming for help in a language she'd never heard him speak. The worst part wasn't the words themselves. It was the timestamps. He'd been writing these posts for 2 years. 2 years of silent suffering while she'd been too busy, too tired, too focused on everything else to notice. The comments broke her heart even more. Dude, same. I thought having kids would complete me. Instead, it erased me. Your feelings are valid. Society tells men we should just be grateful, but nobody talks about the grief of losing yourself. Have you talked to anyone about depression? This sounds like more than just adjustment issues. Priya closed the laptop with shaking hands. The successful surgeon, the problem solver, the woman who could save lives in the operating room, had no idea her husband was dying right in front of her. She heard the front door open, Dev and Arjun returning from the park. "Mommy!" Arjun ran to her with grass-stained knees and a huge smile. "Hey, buddy," she managed, scooping him up while her eyes found Dev's over their son's head. He looked tired. He'd looked tired for months, maybe years. How had she not seen it before? "How was the park?" she asked. "Good," Dev replied with that same flat tone that had become his default setting. But now she heard what she'd missed before, the exhaustion, the defeat, the man disappearing one day at a time. That night, after Arjun was asleep and Dev was in the shower, Priya sat on their bed, staring at the laptop screen. Part of her wanted to confront him immediately, to demand answers, to fix this like she fixed everything else. Instead, she did something that surprised herself. She created her own anonymous account, and she began to type a reply.
Sometimes the deepest conversations happen between strangers, even when those strangers share a bed every night. Username ListeningHeart22. I read your post about feeling invisible. I see you. Your pain is real and it matters. You're not a monster for grieving the life you thought you'd have. You're human. Dev stared at the notification on his phone during Arjun's afternoon nap. In 2 years of posting his darkest thoughts, no one had ever responded with such kindness. He clicked on her profile. Listening Heart22 was new with only a few comments, but each one was thoughtful, empathetic. She seemed to understand things about loneliness that most people miss. "Thank you," he typed back. "I've never told anyone this stuff in real life. Sometimes I think I'm going crazy." "You're not crazy, you're isolated. There's a difference." What would it feel like to be seen again? Really seen? The question hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time Priya had really looked at him? Not through him, not around him, but at him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the house, Priya held her breath as she watched Dev's response appear on her screen. She was terrified and exhilarated, like she was meeting her husband in for the first time in years. Their online conversations became the highlight of both their days. "Silent Dad XXX, I used to have dreams, real ones. I was going to start my own consulting firm, help small businesses grow. I had a 5-year plan, spreadsheets, everything." Listening Heart22, what stopped you? Silent Dad XXX, life, love, the practical choice that felt temporary but became permanent. Now I'm afraid I waited too long. Who hires a guy who's been out of the game for years? Listening Heart22, someone who values wisdom, patience, and the ability to sacrifice for others. Your experience as a father has taught you things about leadership that most business school graduates never learn. For the first time in months, Dev smiled at his phone, really smiled. Priya watched him from the kitchen, drying dishes while he sat on the couch, typing away. He looked lighter, more like the man she'd married. She felt guilty for the deception, but also relieved. Finally, she was talking to her husband again, even if he didn't know it was her. Listening Heart 22, can I ask you something? Do you think your wife knows how much you're struggling? Silent Dad XXX, God, I hope not. She's got enough pressure. She's brilliant, you know, a surgeon. She's saving lives while I'm figuring out what to make for dinner. I don't want to be another burden. Listening Heart 22, what if she wants to carry some of that burden? What if she's been waiting for you to let her? Silent Dad XXX, I don't know how to talk to her anymore. We used to talk about everything. Now we just manage logistics, kid stuff, house stuff. When did we become so formal with each other? Priya had to step outside to cry after reading that message. When had they become formal? When had love turned into a business arrangement? Listening Heart 22, maybe you could start small. One real conversation, one honest moment. Silent Dad XXX, what would I even say? Listening Heart 22, the truth, that you miss her, that you miss yourself, that love isn't supposed to feel this lonely. That night, Dev closed his laptop and found Priya reading in bed. For a moment, he almost said something real, almost asked her when they'd stopped really talking. Instead, he brushed his teeth and went to sleep, carrying the conversation with Listening Heart 22 like a secret warmth in his chest. Priya watched him sleep, wondering how long she could maintain this double life. She was falling in love with her husband all over again, through a screen, through honesty, through the vulnerability he couldn't show her face to face. But she was also lying to him every day. The guilt was becoming unbearable.
The cruelest irony of deception is when the lie becomes more honest than the truth ever was. Dev was smiling at his phone again. Priya watched him over her coffee cup, her stomach twisted in knots. He was reading her messages where she poured out her heart about marriage, loneliness, the weight of success that felt meaningless when the person you loved most had become a stranger. Listening Heart 22, sometimes I wonder if I'm succeeding at everything except the thing that matters most. I'm good at my job, terrible at my marriage. Silent Dad XX, what makes you terrible at marriage? Listening Heart 22, I stopped listening. I got so focused on building my career that I forgot to build my relationship. Now I don't know how to get back to him. Silent Dad XX, back to who? Listening Heart 22, the man I married, the one who used to laugh so hard he'd snort, who'd stay up all night planning our future. I think I killed that person with my ambition. Silent Dad XX, maybe he's not dead. Maybe he's just waiting. Dev typed that message while sitting 3 feet away from his wife, completely unaware that she was the woman breaking his heart with her honesty. The double life was destroying Priya. Every morning she woke up next to the man she was falling in love with all over again through anonymous messages, while their real-life relationship continued to decay. How was your day? She asked over another silent dinner. Fine, Deb replied, cutting Argent's chicken into tiny pieces. But later that night he would type, I had the strangest day. I kept thinking about what you said, about waiting. What if we're all just waiting for someone to make the first move? And she would reply, what if the first move is just admitting we're scared? The conversations were becoming more intimate, more dangerous. They shared childhood memories, fears about parenting, dreams they'd buried under responsibility. Priya learned things about Dev that 5 years of marriage hadn't revealed. Dev found himself looking forward to her messages more than anything else in his day. Silent Dad XX, I think I'm in love with you. Priya stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. Listening Heart 22, you don't know me. Silent Dad XX, I know your heart. I know how you think. I know you understand loneliness in a way that makes me feel less alone. Isn't that love? Listening Heart 22, what about your wife? Silent Dad XX, I love her too, or I love who she used to be, or who I remember her being. I'm not sure anymore. Priya ran to the bathroom and sobbed into a towel. The next day, Dev was different. Lighter. He hummed while making breakfast, played longer with Arjun, even kissed Priya's cheek before she left for work. You seem happy, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Yeah, he said, and for the first time in months, it sounded true. I think I am. But that happiness was built on conversations with her, conversations he didn't know were with her. The irony was suffocating. That evening, Priya found Dev video chatting on his laptop. She could hear a woman's voice, distorted, anonymous, but warm and familiar because it was her own voice, disguised through a voice changer app. He was laughing, actually laughing. When had she last made him laugh? Listening Heart 22, I need to tell you something about who I am. Silent Dad XX, are you married too? Listening Heart 22, yes. And I think I'm making the same mistakes you're talking about. I think I've been so busy being successful that I forgot how to be a wife. Silent Dad XX, what are you gonna do? Listening Heart 22, I don't know. Tell him the truth maybe, that I've been talking to someone who reminded me what it feels like to really connect with another person. Silent Dad XX, that's terrifying. Listening Heart 22, the alternative is worse, staying strangers forever. That night, Priya lay in bed next to Dev, both of them awake, both of them staring at the ceiling, both of them carrying the weight of secrets that were slowly crushing them. The breaking point was coming. She could feel it in every message, every lie, and every moment of connection that should have been happening in real life instead of through screens. Tomorrow, she decided, tomorrow she would tell him the truth, before she lost her nerve, before the deception destroyed what little trust they had left.
The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it breaks you open first. Dev, it's me, it's Priya. The message sat on the screen for 3 minutes before Dev responded. What? I found your Reddit post 2 weeks ago. I've been listening Heart 22 this whole time. Every conversation, every message, it's been me. Dev's laptop screen went dark, then nothing. For 20 minutes, complete silence. Priya sat on their bed, her heart hammering against her ribs, waiting for him to come upstairs. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, slow and heavy, like he was walking to his own execution. He appeared in the doorway, his face completely blank. 2 weeks, he said. His voice was eerily calm. You've known for 2 weeks. Dev, 2 weeks of watching me smile at messages from my own wife? 2 weeks of me telling a stranger I was falling in love with her, not knowing that stranger was the person sleeping next to me every night? He sat down heavily in the chair across from their bed, not next to her. The distance between them felt like an ocean. I told you things, he whispered. Things I've never said out loud. I told you I fantasize about running away from my own life. I know. I told you I sometimes hate being a father. I know. I told you I was in love with someone who wasn't my wife. Priya's voice broke. I know. Dev put his head in his hands. How could you do that? How could you let me pour out my soul to you while pretending to be someone else? Because you wouldn't talk to me. The words exploded out of her. For months, Dev, months, I tried to connect with you. Every conversation died. Every attempt to get close was met with fine and okay and walls so high I couldn't climb them. So you decided to trick me instead. I decided to listen. For the first time in years, I actually heard you. And you know what? I fell in love with you all over again. The real you. The one you've been hiding from me. Dev looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. The real me is a failure, Priya. A man who gave up his dreams and resents his family for it. The real me is someone who cries in the shower and fantasizes about disappearing. The real you, Priya said, moving closer, is someone who has sacrificed everything for the people he loves. Someone who's been carrying pain alone instead of sharing it. Someone who's been protecting me from his struggles because he thinks I can't handle them. Can you handle them? I don't know, she said honestly, but I want to try. I want to meet the person you've become, not just remember the person you used to be. Dev was quiet for a long moment. Then, without warning, he started to cry. Not the silent tears he'd been hiding for months, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere primal. I miss me, he choked out. I miss who I used to be. I miss having dreams. I miss mattering. Priya moved to the floor in front of his chair, taking his hands in hers. You matter to me. No, I don't. I'm just logistics. Someone to handle the stuff you don't have time for. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you asked me about my day and actually waited for an answer? When was the last time we talked about something other than Arjun's schedule or whose turn it is to do dishes? Priya opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, because he was right. I don't know how to be married to someone who's more successful than me. I don't know how to be proud of you without hating myself. I don't know how to love our son without mourning the life I gave up for him. Then let's figure it out together, Priya whispered. Not as the people we used to be, but as the people we are now. Dev reached for her hand, the first time he'd initiated physical contact in months. I'm not the same person you married. Neither am I. What if we don't like who we've become? Then we become someone else, together. Outside their bedroom, Arjun stirred in his sleep, calling out, "Mama," in his dreams. Both parents turned toward the sound. Their son, the little person who had changed everything, who had cost them so much and given them so much. We have to do better, Priya said. For him, for us. I don't know how. Neither do I. But I know we can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. Dev squeezed her hand. No more secrets? No more secrets. It wasn't forgiveness yet. It wasn't even healing. But it was the first honest conversation they'd had in years. And sometimes that's where love begins again, with the courage to stop lying to each other and start telling the truth.
The hardest part of love isn't falling. It's getting back up after you've hit the ground and choosing to fall again. 3 months later, Dev was nervous. It was ridiculous, really. He was nervous about a date with his own wife. But that's what Dr. Rodriguez had suggested, that they start dating each other again, like strangers who were curious about each other instead of spouses who had calcified into roles and resentments. "Tell me something I don't know about you," Priya said over dinner at a restaurant they'd never been to before. No kids menu, no high chairs, no conversations about bedtimes and vegetables. Just them trying to remember who they were outside of being parents. "I've been taking online business courses," Dev admitted, "at night, after everyone's asleep. I'm thinking about starting that consulting firm again. Maybe part-time at first." Priya smiled, not the polite smile she'd perfected over the years, but the real one he'd fallen in love with. "Tell me about it." So he did. He told her about small business development, about marketing strategies he'd been learning, about the idea that had been growing in the back of his mind for months. His eyes lit up in a way she hadn't seen since Arjun was born. "Your turn," he said. "Tell me something I don't know." "I've been thinking about cutting back my hours," she said. "Not retiring, but finding better balance. I miss dinner conversations with you and Arjun. I miss being present for bedtime stories." "Can you do that at the hospital?" "It'll mean fewer opportunities for advancement, less money, but maybe some things are worth more than career trajectory." They talked for 3 hours about dreams deferred and dreams rediscovered, about the weight of parenthood and the unexpected gifts it brought, about how they'd both changed and how they wanted to keep changing, together this time. "I'm still angry sometimes," Dev said as they walked to their car, "about the Reddit thing, about feeling invisible for so long. I know. I'm still figuring out how to apologize for something I did out of love that hurt you anyway. Maybe we don't need perfect forgiveness," Dev said, surprising himself with the thought. "Maybe we just need honest conversation." At home, Arjun ran to them with the enthusiasm only 4-year-olds could muster. "Did you have fun on your date?" "We did, buddy," Priya said, scooping him up. "We remembered how to be friends." "Good," he said, with the wisdom of someone who had sensed the tension in their house for months. "I like it when you laugh together." Later, after bedtime stories and toothbrushing and the gentle chaos of putting a preschooler to bed, Dev and Priya sat on their couch. Actually sat together, instead of on opposite ends like they had been. I have an idea, Priya said. What if we keep talking, not as silent dad and listening heart, but as Dev and Priya? What if we have one real conversation every day? About what? About everything. About how we're feeling, what we're thinking, what scared us that day, what made us proud, like we used to. I'd like that, but I have a condition. What's that? We have to be okay with the messy stuff. The days when I'm still depressed about giving up my career. The days when you're overwhelmed by trying to balance everything. The days when we don't like each other very much. Deal. But I have a condition too, which is we have to be okay with the good stuff too, with being proud of each other, with falling in love again, with admitting that maybe we're both different people than we were when we got married, and that's not automatically a bad thing. Dev thought about that. I used to think changing meant we were failing at marriage. Maybe changing means we're succeeding at being human. 6 months later, Dev launched his consulting business from their spare bedroom. His first client was a small medical practice that needed help with operations management. His second was a restaurant chain looking to streamline their processes. By the end of the year, he was making enough money to contribute meaningfully to their household income again. Not because Priya demanded it, but because he wanted to. Because he'd remembered what it felt like to have something to offer the world beyond childcare logistics. Priya reduced her surgery schedule by 20%. She missed out on a prestigious fellowship opportunity and found she didn't care as much as she had expected. Some evenings, she was home in time to help with homework and hear about Arjun's day directly, instead of getting the summary from Dev later. They still fought. They still had days when the weight of bills and responsibilities and sleep deprivation made them snappy with each other. But they learned the difference between fighting because you're trying to hurt someone and fighting because you're trying to understand them. We're different people than we were when we got married, Dev said one evening, watching Arjun build elaborate block towers while they cooked dinner together. Is that okay? Priya asked. I think so. I think I like who you're becoming. Even if she's not the person you married? Especially because she's not the person I married. That person was 22 and thought she had everything figured out. This person admits when she's wrong and asks for help and makes room for other people's dreams too. Priya thought about that. I like who you're becoming too. Yeah? Yeah. You're stronger than the person I married. You've been broken and put yourself back together, and that takes courage I didn't know you had. They were learning something that no one tells you about marriage. You don't just fall in love once. If you're lucky, if you're brave, if you're willing to keep meeting the person your partner becomes, you fall in love over and over again. With different versions of the same person. With the story you're writing together, one honest conversation at a time. We all change. Time changes us, circumstances change us, parenthood and careers and losses and dreams change us. The question isn't whether we'll become different people than we were when we made our promises to each other. The question is, will we have the courage to meet those new people without judgment? Will we choose to fall in love again, not with who someone used to be, but with who they're becoming? Dev and Priya learned that marriage isn't about staying the same forever. It's about growing in the same direction, even when that growth is painful. Even when it requires admitting that the life you planned isn't the life you're living. Sometimes the person you need to meet most is the one sleeping right beside you, hidden behind years of routine and assumption and the daily logistics of shared life. Sometimes you have to become strangers before you can become soulmates again. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the conversation that saves your marriage is the one you're finally brave enough to have out loud.